Hello, my name is Amber Thompson and I am the owner of AT College Consulting. I'm an independent educational consultant and I help students and families find colleges that match their academic, social, and financial needs. Today, we're going to focus on the all-important financial piece of the college search experience. So let's get into today's goals. First, we're going to learn the anatomy of a financial aid award letter. Then we're going to check out examples and figure out how to read and compare awards. And finally, we're going to understand if, when, and how you can appeal a financial aid award. Let's take a look now at the timeline of the process. First, students receive an admissions to a particular school, and there's all the excitement surrounding that. And then shortly thereafter, students should receive their financial aid award. Sometimes there's a bit of a gap between the delivery of the acceptance letter and the financial aid award letter. So students need to be constantly checking their portals, and they can certainly call the financial aid office if they are feeling like they have been waiting a little too long for their award to arrive. Once you have one award or multiple awards, it's time to really start asking questions, running comparisons, and contemplating writing an appeal if that is necessary. And finally, when you understand all of your options and the full costs of college at your different choices, your student can then make a decision based on solid information. So what makes this process such a challenge? First of all, there is no standardization in how financial aid award letters are written. And we're going to see several examples, and you can see just how different colleges publish their financial aid awards to students. They use different terminology as well as completely different formatting that can create confusion and misunderstanding. And finally, not all costs are included in many award letters, and that can hide the total cost of college. So I'm going to help make sure you know exactly what terms you're looking for and what kind of research that you need to do in order to understand the full cost of college. So let's dive into some of those terms. First is cost of attendance. Now, this is the total cost of college, including tuition, room and board, any college fees, books and supplies, transportation costs, and miscellaneous living expenses. This cost of attendance can be broken down into two different categories. First are direct costs, and these are all the costs charged directly to the student by the college, and they include tuition, room and board, and any mandatory fees. These are all costs for which you will receive a bill directly from the school. And essentially, these are not fees that really change. There might be slight variations, perhaps if your student chooses a triple or a double or a single type of room or a different meal plan. But once the student makes those choices, those fees are set and established, and you'll receive a bill directly from the school to pay for those costs. Now, indirect costs, on the other hand, are not directly billed from the college, but they do include all of the additional costs of college that truly vary from student to student. And they include items such as books and supplies, transportation costs, and miscellaneous living expenses. So I hope you can see that those types of costs will certainly vary depending on perhaps where your student lives, if they have, just a short drive to campus, or they need a cross-country flight. Some classes have much more expensive books than others, so there can be a lot of variables with indirect costs. Okay, so I mentioned before that colleges use all sorts of terminology to convey the cost of college. And these are all of the different words that you could look for in order to find the costs of college. So you can see there's a vast list of words that colleges use to convey how much their school is going to cost for a particular student. And it's really important to know that not all colleges list all costs. Okay, so what we want to focus on first when we get a financial aid award letter is to find out if the student has received any free money. And this would be gift aid that the student does not need to pay back. So the first way might be federal and state grants. And this is free money, gift aid, that is awarded based on financial need as determined by the information provided by the family on the FAFSA. The second, institutional grants. And these are also provided by a college when a family has demonstrated financial need. So a school might take a look at their total cost of attendance and understand that a family simply cannot afford to pay that much. And very often a school will provide a grant to cover that gap between what the college costs and what the family can actually afford. Not all schools do this. Some do a better job than others, but institutional grants are very common. The third type of free money that does not need to be paid back are institutional scholarships and merit aid. And these can be awarded for a whole host of reasons. Your student can receive a merit aid for academic excellence, perhaps their athletic involvement, a particular talent they might have, a career that they aspire towards, and any particular group affiliations as well might offer scholarships or merit aid award. Merit money can also be a form of sort of like a standard tuition discount that is offered to the vast majority of students entering that school as a way to attract students to their institution. And merit money can also be used to shape the incoming class, depending on what the college is looking for that particular year. Now, if you get a financial aid award and you've got some free money on there, there are some questions that you need to ask and things to take into consideration with gift aid. First of all, I want you to check to see if the award is renewable. Can the student count on receiving this money each year that they are in their undergraduate career? There are some colleges out there that will front load awards, which means that they are giving freshmen a much higher award than they might be able to continue to receive in their subsequent years. So a school might make it pretty affordable for a family freshman year, but then they pull that funding for subsequent years and a family is really left questioning how they can pay. So it's key to make sure that an award is something that that student can get for 4 years, not just one. Your second main question needs to be to understand the terms of maintaining the award. Does your student need to maintain a certain GPA? Do they need to take a certain number of classes? Are there other commitments? For example, an athlete might need to play on the field. An artist might need to do community service in an art capacity in the community. And someone who's receiving a merit aid award for their musicianship might be asked to play in the school's orchestra or band as a way of maintaining their financial award. So it's key to make sure you understand all the requirements there. And third is a really important consideration if you are receiving grant money that is based on your demonstrated financial need. That money can change each year because each year you will need to submit a new FAFSA or a CSS profile. And the CSS profile is essentially an additional documentation that a small number of schools ask for, where they do an even deeper dive into your family assets and your financial situation than the FAFSA. So you need to really understand that if you have perhaps, or if you're anticipating different financial circumstances for your family in the future, that can impact the grant money and the cost of college because your demonstrated financial need might change. It's also important to ask the college if any grant aid that you're receiving will be reduced if you happen to bring in outside scholarships. This doesn't happen often, but there are a few schools that will reduce the grant aid that they are providing if you are then bringing in outside scholarships. So it's important to know the answer to that question if your student is receiving outside awards. Will it impact the money that they are receiving for free from the institution at all? Okay, so it's really important once we know the big cost of attendance at a school and we know the gift aid, once we figure out those two, we can actually determine the net price of the school. So we're going to add up all the free money that the student can get for that year, and we're going to subtract that number from the big cost of attendance for 1 year. And that's going to be the net price of that particular college. And then I need you to know that you need to make sure you repeat that for all colleges. So it's really important that you understand the net price for all of the college options that your student is considering. Okay, so we've taken a look at the free money category. What about loans and self-help aid? We're going to dive into these different categories and see how they can impact your total cost of college as well. There are two main types of loans. There are subsidized loans and unsubsidized loans. A subsidized loan from the federal government is a loan that a student qualifies for based on their FAFSA submission. The federal government will pay the interest on a subsidized loan while the student is in college. The college will determine the amount of money you can borrow, which cannot exceed your financial need. Unsubsidized loans, on the other hand, any student who submits a FAFSA can apply for an unsubsidized loan each year. There are no requirements to demonstrate financial need in order to get an unsubsidized federal loan. The student is responsible for the interest accrued on this loan while they are still in college. And that is one of the main differentiation points between the subsidized loan and the unsubsidized loan. Subsidized loan, the government is paying the interest while you're in school, and an unsubsidized loan, the student is responsible for the interest. Now, if a dependent student took out the maximum amount of federal loans each year, that would total $27,000 for their 4-year undergraduate experience. Federal work study is also based on financial need, somewhat similar to eligibility for the subsidized federal loans. Typically, a student can earn $2,000 to $3,000 during the year and will be expected to work 6 to 10 hours a week. The amount that is listed on a financial aid award letter for federal work study is not guaranteed, but it is an earnings limit. Money earned during the work study job is paid directly to the student. So the student is actually getting this money in their pocket. So it's not going directly to the college to pay any bills. It really is the student's responsibility for determining the best way to spend their work study dollars. Now, students are responsible for finding the job on campus if they are awarded federal work study. So there's certainly a responsibility factor worked into federal work study jobs. Another form of loans that you might see in the self-help section of the financial aid award letter are Parent Plus loans. These are loans that a family actually has to apply for separately, and your credit does play a factor into whether or not you qualify for a Parent Plus loan. Frustratingly, Parent Plus loans are often listed incorrectly as aid on an award letter. So it can be very confusing to the family to see a large Parent Plus loan on an award letter. Parents can actually borrow up to the full cost of attendance minus any other financial aid your student receives. So families can certainly borrow a very sizable amount of money if they do qualify in order to pay for college. The current interest rate today is 5.50% for disbursements. So what that indicates is that a Parent Plus loan may not always offer families the best interest rate. So it's always wise to shop around. What I really encourage families to do is to keep in mind that college is a 4-year commitment. So it's important to anticipate the costs for all 4 years, not just the first year. Too often I've heard of families knowing how to pay for the first year or the second year and committing, but being uncertain as to how to pay for the entire duration of the student's undergraduate journey. And so sometimes that means that a student might need to transfer to a different school if a family cannot continue to pay. They may need to pause their education for a while. And those types of disruptions can really be detrimental to the student in pursuing their ultimate goal of achieving college graduation. So when you go to think about the fact that college is a 4-year commitment, when you're estimating the costs, you should anticipate that prices will increase approximately 5% each year for college. Now, there are some schools that will actually lock in tuition price when you start as a freshman and promise not to raise it for the next 4 years of your undergraduate career. However, those schools are pretty rare. It's a bonus if you happen to apply to one and commit there, but for the most part, you should assume that college costs will increase each year and to factor those increases into your calculations. All right, it is finally time to get into some of the financial aid award letters. So I'm very excited to show you all very current examples. And I'm going to start with the best ones, and I'm going to show you what I love about them. And we're going to work our way down. Once we're pros at reading the good ones, then we're going to be able to identify the examples that leave a lot to be desired. Okay, this is a current example from Gonzaga. This is a private institution up in Washington State. And what I like here is that the estimated direct costs are clearly labeled. And we've talked before about how the direct costs are the ones that will be billed directly to the family. So that involves the tuition, the required fees, and the housing and meal plan. So we have clearly labeled the total estimated direct cost. Now, I also like that they clearly identify the gift aid. And again, that is money that you do not have to pay back. And so this particular student has a gift aid of about $30,500. And then Gonzaga does the calculation for the family, where they subtract the direct costs, or they subtract the gift aid from the direct costs to come up with the estimated net cost. So if this student took all the gift aid, which of course they're going to, if they decide to go to the school, they're going to take all the free money that is offered to them. And we take that, we subtract that from the total estimated cost. This family is looking at a responsibility of just over $31,000. Now, I also like how Gonzaga separates out the other aid. So down here, we've got the federal subsidized and unsubsidized loans. So they have those listed out as well. And if you combine the total loans that a student might take out with the gift aid that they're giving, then the total financial aid offer down below is just over $40,000. So I like how it's clearly labeling direct costs, gift aid, and the loan portion on this particular financial aid offer. I also like that they encourage families to remember that there are additional costs of college. So right down here, they're clearly listing estimates for books and supplies, loan fees, personal expenses, and transportation. So they've got that listed off as well. And they do actually add those figures into a total cost of attendance down here, where they've got not only the direct costs up above, up here, but then they've also added in these estimated costs that families should also consider. I also like that Gonzaga has these side notes along the way where you can actually go to get your questions answered if you're uncertain as to which column means what. And I also like how they discuss payment options. So you'll be able to see on many financial aid award letters just how you might be expected to actually pay this sizable bill. Okay, we are going to move on to another good example of a financial aid award letter. And as you can see, this one looks very different from the last one we took a look at. It's a lot busier on the page, essentially. It's broken down into fall, spring, and totals. They've also got a summer category, but most students don't. Most undergraduates don't take summer classes. So there's a lot going on in this particular letter. But what I really like is how they have scholarships and grants listed off as free money. So this is really a distinguishing factor. They're clearly stating, hey, this is the free money we are giving you. And the free money totals up over here on the side actually to almost $48,000 for this particular student. Now, down here, they've got the loan category. And again, they're clearly indicating that this is money that must be repaid. So the student is being offered $5,500 in possible loans, but if they decide to take that out, that would be money that would need to be repaid. Down here, they've got federal work study. So this particular student actually qualified for funding from this program. And I love here that it's labeling federal work study as money that must be earned by working, clearly by the students. So I like how they have clearly labeled these different categories of funding for the family and the students. Down here below, we have direct costs and indirect costs listed out into two separate columns. So over here, we've got our direct costs, which again, those are those tuition and housing and fees. Those are clearly separated out from our indirect costs, our books, supplies, transportation, miscellaneous. So they've clearly separated those out. And they also have two total columns. So the price of attendance with just direct costs is over here. And over here would be the total cost of attendance if you're actually taking into consideration all of those indirect costs as well. I also like how they break down the estimated cost for this student after all aid. And if you're just simply looking at the category with direct costs, this is going to cost the student $6,000 approximately. But if you're taking a look at all of the additional costs as well, the student is looking at a more realistic cost of $9,256. And that is if they take out the federal loan, if they do their work, and they accept all of the different free money that is being offered as well. Okay, let's take a look at another example. Okay, and on this one, what we have, this is from St. Olaf, which is a private institution up in Minnesota. And what I like here, you do have to look carefully. We're going to find the total cost of attendance right up here at the top. And it's definitely in a smaller font. You have to look a little harder to find it, but it is there, which is good. It's just harder to find. Okay, so I like that St. Olaf has broken it down into grants and scholarships, free money right here. This is your cost after grants and scholarships. So they do the money for you. They take that cost of attendance that they've got listed up here, and then they subtract out the free gift money, and they then give a grand total for this family of $31,680. Now, if the student were to take out the loans, then they would have a different cost. It would be $5,500 less, they would be receiving a bill for $26,180. Now, what I do, I like down here that they are giving us our estimated additional expenses. However, it's a little frustrating that they're actually not included in any of the calculations. So the family would then need to keep in mind that these additional expenses need to be added to the total cost of college. Another thing to note here is that this award letter indicates that the financial aid award is based on a sibling attending a particular college. And for a few more years, it will matter whether or not a sibling is actually in college, and there might be a financial benefit to the family if the sibling is going as well. Okay, let's continue on. Let's see, which one do we have next? All right, we have an award letter from Nazareth. Here we're going to start getting into some of my frustrations about some of the award letters. What I think causes the most confusion here is that you'll see we've got scholarship listed and another scholarship, another grant, but down here below we have work study and our loans. And now these are all lumped in together as our aid. And that can be confusing to the family because it's not separated out right here as to what is gift aid and what is money that the family might need to pay back through loans or earn through work study. Down here below, it does give us our estimated direct costs. So I appreciate that the letter does indicate that. One thing that's important to note, though, is that these are estimated charges. I happen to know that this was a student who was admitted earlier on in the cycle. And sometimes when that happens, the Board of Trustees hasn't voted yet on the actual prices for that upcoming school year. And so sometimes you might see estimated charges. And so this could change when the board actually votes on future pricing. Down here below, there's a tiny side note that that you need to take into account additional expenses for books and supplies and transportation and personal expenses. So they it's subtly listed here that we estimate your total cost of attendance to be $55,000, but it's certainly not as direct and bold as we've seen on some other letters. Okay, all right, what do we have next? Sarah Lawrence College. Okay, what we've got going on here, again, we have a letter that lists together the scholarships, and in this term, it's actually called a tuition award. So that's slightly different verbiage than we've seen before. Before we've seen grants, we've seen scholarships, and Sarah Lawrence lists it as a tuition award. But that is free money, just using different verbiage. So they do have it lumped together with work study and student loans. But we have a very generous package here of $64,520, which is quite a sizable amount, especially when you take into account this $56,000 Merit Aid Award. However, what's totally missing from this letter is the cost for tuition, room and board, and any additional costs. So yes, we know the aid that the student is being offered, but we have no idea what the actual cost of this institution is. So the parents are going to have to go and look up all of that information and then do the math themselves. I've mentioned before about when you receive a Merit Aid Award, it's important to know the requirements of maintaining the award. So Sarah Lawrence does list that out here. However, it's definitely confusing because it says that financial aid is available for the first 132 credits attempted, including transfer credits. So in order to understand this, you really need to understand how Sarah Lawrence counts their classes. And that's going to be additional information that the family is going to need to look up and figure out. Some classes are counted by credits, some are counted by hours, some are simply counted, as the whole course is just one course. Very often there are multiple ways that schools list out their classes. And so in order to actually understand this award, the family is going to need to do some research and figure out what Sarah Lawrence's process is for counting classes. All right, here we have another example that's missing a few key factors. And what it's mostly missing, perhaps you guys can all see since we've seen so many of these now, again, no cost for tuition, room and board, and additional costs. So this is going to be information that the student and the family are going to have to go find out themselves. And up here, we've got a description of all the different loans. Down here, it is broken out into a gift assistance category and a borrowed assistance category. So they are identifying that they are different. They just happen to all be lumped together up here. What I happen to know about this particular letter is that this school was unable to come even close to meeting this student's demonstrated financial need. And that's an important thing to know, is that not all schools meet your financial need. This particular student should be paying almost close to zero because of her financial situation. And I know on here we don't have the total costs for tuition and room and board, but I promise you that it's about $30,000 greater than the amount of assistance she's been offered. So this is certainly not going to be a possibility for this student, as the school did not come close to meeting this student's demonstrated financial need. Okay, just a couple more examples. Again, here we have some of my biggest pet peeves in financial aid letters. First, again, no cost for tuition, room and board, additional costs. We have all of the loans here listed in together with the free money. So there is free money. We've got a couple of grants, but then we've got the loans. And my biggest pet peeve of all is when the Parent Plus loan is included in the aid total. And it's a sizable loan as well, over almost $11,000 that they are suggesting that this family take out in order to pay this bill. So a Parent Plus loan should never be included in this aid total because it is very confusing to families as to what category this particular type of aid falls into. And again, the family will need to apply completely separately for this, so they may or may not qualify for this particular loan. So I am not pleased when I see Parent Plus loans lumped into the aid total, because it is certainly not aid. It is a loan that a family will need to go and take out on their own. Okay. Now we're going to get into the part where I show the actual Excel spreadsheet that I use to help families figure out exactly how they can compare the costs. And encouraging you to do this, to fill it out, really emphasizes the importance of figuring out what all of the separate costs are for each of the schools. Because oftentimes a family will just take a look at tuition. For example, maybe they know that Sarah Lawrence has a tuition of 56, and they know that Nazareth certainly falls less than that. And so they might automatically assume that Sarah Lawrence is going to be the more expensive choice. However, when they actually have to sit down and put all of this information into a spreadsheet, they can see that that is actually not going to be the case once we plug in all of the numbers. Okay. So up here, I've listed all of the costs of attendance that we've gone over multiple times. Down here, I've got all the gift aid, all of that free money that we've been looking and finding on the different award letters. And you can see there's a very sizable difference in the amount of money given for free from both Nazareth and Sarah Lawrence. We've got our self-help portion down here, which are the loans that the student could take out and the work study that they have been offered and they can choose to pursue if that is something they want to do. So I want to point out that line 5 down here, excuse me, represents the total expense to the family, which is the cost of attendance minus the gift aid. So for each of these columns, we took the total cost of attendance, we subtracted this gift aid, and we come down and we've got line 5, which is that total expense to the family. And there's this very sizable difference between Nazareth and Sarah Lawrence here. Now, if we look at line 4 represents the out-of-pocket cost if you decide to take out loans and earn work study. So again, you can see that there is a sizable difference. So the difference between line 5 and line 4 is simply in line 4, we've made the calculation based on the family opting to take out loans and to participate in federal work study. So just looking at tuition alone, one might have assumed that Sarah Lawrence was going to be the more expensive choice. But down here in both lines 4 and 5, we can see that it is actually the more affordable choice for this particular family. Okay, now so many of these financial aid award letters generated a lot of questions from me, and I'm sure from you. What you really need to keep in mind is that the financial aid officers are available to answer your questions and address your concerns at any time. You can appeal a financial aid award at any point in the process. If you know, for example, at the very beginning when you're submitting your application, that the information that you submitted on your FAFSA needs to be updated, you can contact them. If you're getting your award letter and you know things just are amiss, please give them a call. And if anything happens while your student is actually in school, awards can be adjusted in the middle of the school year as well if there are some extenuating circumstances. Now, whereas I usually encourage students to be the ones to reach out to admissions officers, when it comes to financial aid, I generally encourage the parents to get involved and communicate directly. There are opportunities for students to get involved with this process. However, students often don't know all the questions to ask, and they may not know all of the details about their family finances. When you're taking a look at award letters, you may want to write an appeal for more funds. And now there can be essentially 2 different ways that you are asking for more funds. You may want to appeal for more need-based funds, or you may want to appeal for more merit aid funds. And they are definitely going to have a different process for the appeal situation. So when you're appealing for more need-based funds, these letters will be addressed to the financial aid office and will require additional financial documentation from the parent. So the school needs to understand your financial situation beyond what was represented on the FAFSA. If you're appealing for more merit aid funds, on the other hand, which are those scholarships based on a whole host of factors, these letters are generally addressed to the admissions office. Sometimes it might also be the financial aid office. It depends from school to school. And it will require a personal letter from the student that presents a compelling reason to receive more aid. So we're going to break down both of these options for appealing for more aid. All right, and first we're going to look at appealing for more need-based aid. And there are a wide variety of reasons why a family would want to reach out to the financial aid office to discuss their needs. It's important to keep in mind that when you submit a FAFSA, you are submitting prior year's information. So for students who are going into college in fall of 2021, their family actually submitted tax documentation for the 2019 year. And for many families, the 2019 year perhaps looks dramatically different from what happened in 2020 and even in 2021. So very often there can be different circumstances that would, the family would need to call the financial aid office about and express that things have changed. There can be a job loss or a decrease in income, a divorce, an unfortunate passing of a parent. There can be an unusual one-time financial event. Perhaps there was severance pay, perhaps there was a stock payout. There can be one-time events that make your tax situation for 1 year look very different than it's going to look in future years. And if you have situations like that, that is definitely a reason to reach out to the financial aid office and explain that this one-time event is certainly not going to happen again, and that, please don't assess us based on this one-time event. Some schools take into account if there are childcare costs, unreimbursed medical and dental expenses, any catastrophic losses from damage or from natural disasters. Some also take into account if you have extra expenses involved with caring for a family member, or perhaps family education costs for a sibling in K through 12. Here are 5 tips for appealing for more need-based aid. So this essentially breaks down the key components of the process. First of all, you need to call the college financial aid office to ask questions about the appeals process and to complete any forms required by the college. You need to identify the special circumstances that affect your ability to pay for college and gather third-party documentation of those changes and impacts. Then you need to write a concise 1 to 2 page appeal letter summarizing the special circumstances and the financial impact on your family. It's important to emphasize those special circumstances that are due to factors outside of the family's control. It's also advised to not ask for a specific amount of money, as you may actually request less than you need. And really the key in the entire appeals process is to be polite. Okay, if you are interested in appealing for more merit-based aid, it's a slightly different process. This involves having the student write a polite letter expressing excitement about being admitted and gratitude for the merit aid award already received. It's important to be direct that you are writing to receive more aid, so state it directly, and then briefly discuss why the school is a great fit and why you need the money in a clear and respectful way. You can include personal updates since your application was submitted. Perhaps there were improved grades, awards received, new accomplishments. You can let the school know about that as perhaps a reason why you deserve more merit aid. If you happen to have competing offers for more money, you can share the award letters and let the school know that they are your top choice and that additional funds will allow you to accept their offer of admission. When schools actually put out an offer of admission, they are very excited when you actually decide to pick their institution and attend. So, that can be a motivating factor on their end. Perhaps if you just need a little bit extra money in order to be encouraged to say yes, sometimes this appeal process works and you can get additional funding. I wanted to point out this particular resource from Swift Student. They actually provide a whole host of free financial appeal resources. This was born out of the pandemic when so many students' financial situations had changed, and this particular institution wanted to make sure that families had templates and explanations as to how to appeal their financial aid process so that they could get the funding that they need in order to pay for college. With appeals, you'll never know if you don't ask. So it's important to not be afraid of asking for more money, because the worst they can do is say no. They're certainly not going to take away your admissions offer. They're not going to take away the money that you already received. And taking the time to write that letter might earn you the extra money. With merit aid, it's important to don't expect a huge increase, but it is common to see an increase of a few $1,000s. The bottom line is, if you need more money, ask politely and properly. Well, that concludes today's presentation on the financial aid award letter and appeal process. If you have any questions, I encourage you to reach out with me. Check out my my website for any free resources, including blogs and additional videos on YouTube and testimonials. And I always offer families a free 45-minute consultation to discuss how I can help your family with the college search experience. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you learned a lot.